Hey everybody, how's it going? It's your friend Katicus here, and today I'm doing a little bit of a different video. Instead of reviewing gear or showing you a specific device that I have, I'm going to talk about the different things I have in my home studio and what I like to use the most and what I don't like to use very much, or which I have used in a lot of my tracks and that which I haven't used. So I'm gonna go through all the different gear and show it to you. I won't be in the camera for most of it. I'll just be aiming it at the devices as I talk about them. I also won't be playing many of them. Maybe I'll play a few notes on a couple things during the video, but most of it I'll just be talking about it because I don't have it all hooked up. Somehow my MIDI wiring or my MIDI routing got all messed up and I can't actually trigger some of my synths right now. So that's something I'll have to sort out in the future, and I keep dreading doing it, but I'll get to it eventually. Anyway, let's flip the camera around and have a look at the different synths and have a rundown about what I use and how I use it. Okay, see you guys in a second. Alright, so let's start with the elephant in the room. This is the first analog synthesizer I got. This is the Moog Voyager XL. It's the Voyager, like the original Voyager, is from this part on and a little bit less keys. Basically this long of a Voyager. The Voyager XL has more keys, of course, and a patch bay in it, modulation bay. So this is the first analog synthesizer I got, and it was between this one and the Arturia Matrix Brute, and I was kind of torn between them because I like the style and everything of the Matrix Brute, but this one pulled ahead and I ended up getting it, and I was kind of blown away by it. Actually, I should say it's not the very first analog synthesizer I got. The very first one I got was the Moog, Mini Moog? No, not Moog. What am I talking about? The Korg, I forget. It's not the Micro Korg. It's Minilog, the Minilog. That was the first one I got, and I liked analog so much, so I decided to get one of these. And although I really love it, and I like playing around with it, let's start turning stuff on while I'm making this video. I like playing around with it, and it's fun to use and stuff. I haven't actually used it in a lot of tracks that I've made because, well, I don't know why. I guess I have a really crappy imagination when it comes to sound, so I can't really see a home for them in music. So unless a sound really grabs me, like a preset or whatever, and I can tweak it a bit and make it my own, I can't really think of a place to put it in my music. So I haven't found a lot of sounds in here that really grab me. There's a lot of like, let's see if I can get any sound come out of here. Just give me a second. It says basical, but it's actually a better lead if you ask me. It's a pretty good lead. Anyway, it's called a soft bass. It doesn't sound like a soft bass to me. Maybe if I turn the... Not bad as a bass. So anyway, yeah, I really like this synthesizer, more so, like, not so much for using in my tracks, but more so for using it to just kind of like tweak the knobs and play around with sounds. I have done a lot with this synthesizer that I haven't recorded. So something like the Jupiter 80, for example, I've put it in a lot of songs because a lot of the presets, and I am a preset guy, I will find a preset and it just speaks to me and I want to make a melody out of it, and I might tweak it a bit, or I might use it as it is, and yeah, so the presets on here, they don't really speak to me so much. The presets on here really do, they just sound good automatically. But I do really like this thing for just sonic exploration, just playing, like putting in a initialized patch and then building patches, patch building. This one's really fun for doing that. I am considering selling it though, because I'd like to make space in my limited space studio and get another synth in here. I'm thinking the ASM Hydra synth. So we might be saying goodbye to the Mini Moog Voyager XL, but I haven't fully decided yet because I do kind of love it at the same time. As for its build quality and everything, it is a really nice synthesizer. It's really heavy. It's got, like, I think a maple cabinet. And it's a really nice synthesizer. I just wish I had used it more in my tracks. I wish that I could have more ideas of how to use it in my tracks. Although I must say that even though, in my personal opinion, the presets don't sound great on their own, when you run them through like resonance, or not resonance, when you run them through reverb, they sound absolutely fantastic. So maybe later, we'll see. Moving over, we've got the Jupiter 80 right here, and I use this one a lot for a lot of tracks. This one is in a lot of my tracks. This synthesizer was quite hated at the time that it was made because it looks like a Jupiter 8, and people were expecting a Jupiter 8 like remake, but the Jupiter 80 is many things, but it is not a Jupiter 8. So that got it a lot of hate. Also, it's a little bit difficult to work with all the layers. So if you go into a patch here and I click exit, you've got a lot of layers. So if I go to edit this one layer right here, then there's actually 4 other synthesizers in there. You can turn those ones off. And I can turn them on. Yeah, it has aftertouch and everything. But I do enjoy using this one. A lot of the reason is because I can just accidentally discover sounds that sound really good and I just want to put them into songs. I'm the kind of guy that when I have a new idea for a song, a lot of it is because of a patch that I've just run across or a sound that I've created, and it just inspires me to make a melody out of it. There's, ooh, that sounds really good, and it makes me want to make something. So this synthesizer is really good for that. I don't think I'll ever sell this one because it's just got so much capability. It is such a nice synthesizer to use. I do enjoy it very much. Moving along, this up here is my OP1, and this is probably one of 2 that I've used the most out of any of my gear to actually make tracks out of. The best way I would describe an OP1 is it is a musical notepad. So it doesn't have a lot of tracks. There's only 4 tracks in it when you're making a song. I don't know if it's going to turn on, but we'll find out. There's only 4 tracks in it, but you can overdub onto tracks endlessly. So you can actually make some pretty complex things. Yeah, mine's got a bit of a power switch issue, so it likes to turn off a lot. Anyway, okay, we'll just forget that. Anyway, so yeah, it's really good for jotting down ideas. Like you can just play a melody and then record it, and then play a beat and record that, and then add some extra layers to it, and just start building a track more and more complex as you go along. It's great for even making some lo-fi tracks just with the single device itself. This is one of the most useful devices I've ever bought. It's kind of expensive. It's quite expensive for the size of it, but it's nicely made. It's heavy. It's made out of aluminum. I say it's nicely made, and yet at the same time it's not quite working properly. I think there's some dust in the power switch, so it doesn't actually like trigger properly. But yeah, that's probably one of the most unfortunate things about the OP1 is that a lot of, I would say a lot, I'd say probably 5% of the people who buy an OP1 eventually get problems like if you press a key, it'll double trigger and stuff like that, or just little issues with it. The headphone jack sometimes doesn't work or whatever. It's not everybody has issues, and it's not everybody has every issue. It's kind of like the occasional person gets some issue with it. And apparently, teenage engineering is a little bit difficult to deal with because they're so busy all the time that they don't have time to do all the repairs and stuff. But that's only what I've heard, so I don't know for certain. It could be just a load of hogwash, and maybe they're really nice to deal with. I don't know. Okay, moving over here in my studio, you'll see my little speakers right here. These are my studio speakers. A lot of people think that they're just computer speakers, but they're not. They're iLoud. What are they? What's the model on this? iLoud. IK Multimedia iLoud. They're very heavy, they're very solid, and though they're small, they do pump out some really good sound, great basses, mids, and treble. So although you might be thinking that I'm using computer speakers, I'm not. They're actually quite well made. They're very nice, and they're good for my limited amount of space. Now this right here, the MPC Live, is the device that I use more than anything else. It's not only the heart of... Oh, stop flashing. It's not only the heart of my studio, but it's also, like, I love the built-in VSTs. I love the drum packs in here. I've used a lot of them in a lot of the tracks that I've made. Out of all the devices I've used this one 90% of the time. Everything else, a combined 10. So this is the heart of my studio. This is the thing that I use the most out of everything. I absolutely love it. I think that it's fantastic. It's not perfect, but it's damn near perfect. And if somebody just wants to like start making music and they don't know where to start, then the MPC Live by Akai is one fantastic place to start. It's just such a good device. Down here, I've got my Korg. Let's see if I can turn this on. My Korg Elektra MX, otherwise called the MX1. This is the second version of the Elektra series. And I bought this one because I loved the character of it. It just has such good character. You look at like the orange valves, like the orange glow and the valves inside there, and the layout, it just looks so fun to play with. And you can build entire tracks on it. It's kind of cool how it's all laid out. It's cool how it's all laid out when you've got a different synth track on here. Let's see if I can turn up the volume a little bit. Is that the master volume? There we go. It's mono synthesis, so you can't play chords on it. Kind of some cool features on it. You can move this up and lots of cool little features on here to tweak and play around with. And if you're just an aspiring musician and you want to do something with a device that isn't super expensive, I mean, they're probably going to start getting rare eventually, but I think you can find them on eBay for a decent price. This is a 2007 or 2006 device, so they're not so readily available, but you can probably find them. And if you're just starting out, this is kind of a cool start. There's a lot to do with it. There's built-in effects. There's lots of different synthesizers built into it. Good drum synths, and there's tons of drum synths in there, tons of different drum samples in there to choose from. That's just one drum pack. There's tons of different drum packs, although I don't remember right offhand how I go through all the drum packs. It's something to do with in here. But yeah, it's a pretty good device, and I would say I use this, not so much. I've made a couple tracks with it, but it's another one that I just kind of like to play around with. I would say this one spends a lot of time turned off. I don't use it as much as I probably wish I could. Moving over here, there's the Novation Peak. I have used this in quite a few tracks. Out of all my synthesizers, I would say this is in the top 3. The sound that you can get out of the Novation Peak is just absolutely fantastic. This is a highly underrated synthesizer. It has wonderful built-in reverb and delay and chorus. I don't really use the chorus, but the reverb especially just sounds longing. I'm sorry I can't play it for you right now. This is one of the ones that the MIDI chain got messed up and I can't get it to trigger right now. I have to redo my MIDI wiring. But the Novation Peak is an absolutely fantastic synth. It has 8 voices, so you can play 8 different key, like 8 key chords if you want to. I don't know how many people do that. But you can also stack voices so that each key presses 2 voices. It's been surpassed now by the Novation Summit, which is basically 2 peaks inside of a keyboard cabinet with 16 voices. But if you're looking for an absolutely fantastic desktop synthesizer, the Peak is something you can't go wrong with. It's just such a great synthesizer. The sounds that it produces are professional sounding. They can be ratchety, they can be longing and low and calling from the far abyss. They're fantastic, and it is such a great synthesizer. Moving over here, we've got the Access Virus. I've used it in a few tracks. I do like to do music exploration on it. I bought this one secondhand. I'm not disappointed with it, although it's missing 1 foot there, so it doesn't sit stable. It is a pretty good synth. It's actually, I'd say it's similar to the Peak in the sounds that it can do. It's very versatile. It can do extremely different sounds, like sounds on this end of the soundscape and sounds on the exact opposite end of the soundscape. If you sat for an afternoon and started playing around and tweaking and creating patches on here, you could spend a lot of time doing it. Because I bought it secondhand, I didn't get a manual with it, so I still totally, I don't totally know how to use it. I know how to do basic stuff, but for example, I don't even know how to initialize a patch to go down to baseline. So every patch that I create comes from another patch, and I just kind of tweak it from there. It's unfortunate. Like this one here, I can just press a button combination and initialize it, so it's just like a single square wave, and then start building on top of that with extra voices and extra oscillators. This one, I have no friggin' idea how to do that, but it is fun to do sonic exploration. I've also updated it once since I got it, and it came with a whole bunch of new sounds, and that's been fun discovering and exploring those new patches, new presets. Anyway, moving along. Here I've got my OB6. I've used this one in quite a few tracks. I really like this synthesizer. I think the build quality is fantastic. The wooden sides, the metal casing, the weight of it and everything. This is another one that I bought secondhand, but the person who sold it to me kept it in way better condition. When I got it, it was basically brand new, not a single bump, nick, or scratch. And it's been fun to use, but I would say that it's limited. That might be one of the biggest criticisms that people have against the OB6, is that it's limited. It makes like sound in a specific range really, really good, like amazingly. But once you get outside of that range, it's kind of limited to sounding amazing for a certain range and then kind of like meh on like left or right of that range. I don't know if I'm explaining it properly. Again, a lot of this can be boiled down to my lack of imagination when it comes to like sound. So I can hear a sound and I have no idea how to use it. And that's for a lot of sounds. There's only very specific sounds that kind of tickle my ears and make me want to make sound out of it. This one can do a lot of those sounds, but it also does a lot of sounds that don't have any ear tickling going on whatsoever. So I think I've basically run out of ideas for what I can do with this synthesizer. Maybe if I spent an afternoon sitting there and just patch building, I could come up with more to do with it. But generally speaking, I would say that I feel tapped out on it. And that's actually a sentiment I have for a lot of my synthesizers, or a lot of the gear that I have, is that I've kind of used up the readily available stuff. That's basically like oil drilling. You get all the oil that's easy to get, and now you have to dig deeper to get like the harder to get stuff. I kind of feel like that with my synthesizers, is that when I first get them, they bring me so many ideas with their presets and with their like new sonic capabilities. But after a little while, I start to get like all the easy to get stuff is gone, and then I have to dig deeper, and I'm just, again, I lack imagination, and it's very hard for me to come up with ideas. Anyway, moving on. Here's the MC808. This is an older groove box back from 2007, I think. This one it's been a lot of fun to use. The workflow is fantastic on it. It's super duper easy to use. Like you just press record and play, and then play in a little melody, and then it starts playing that in whatever pattern there is. So you record it into pattern 1 and it'll keep playing that. You can mute it and unmute it. Then you do pattern 2 and you do another melody, and then it's recorded, and you just keep stacking them. And then for doing, like, for example, live performances would be fantastic on this, because all you'd have to do is mute everything except for what you want to start with in the song, start playing it, and then once you go through 8 bars, you unmute something else to add more like sonic complexity to it. And you keep doing that. You stack and you reduce and you add, and you can do really good live performances on here. But building the song is really fun, doing that same process of building layer by layer and adding them together. I like the workflow on here. It's actually very similar to the EMX1, very similar. And I think that makes it easier for me to make music in, because of my limited imagination. This kind of like makes it so that I'm not overwhelmed by the possibilities with it. I just have to focus on one layer and build it, and then focus on the next one and build it. And it's fun to make music that way. So yeah, I'm happy with this one, quite happy with this one. This one is the kind of thing that you could grab your headphones, grab this thing, throw it in a backpack, go to a cafe, sit there and just play around with for an entire afternoon. It's a lot of fun to use. Moving along to the Make Noise O Coast. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't like this thing at all. I don't think there's any problem with it. It's well made. It's like a fully metal device. It's got lots of knobs to tweak and turn and stuff. But when I went to the synth shop, the synth shop to buy this, I actually didn't go there to buy this thing. I went there with the intention to spend about $3,000 on my like startup modular gear, my Eurorack gear. I wanted to just build a rack with a bunch of stuff, spend about $3,000 on it, and see what I could make out of it. And while I was in there, the guy that was showing me all this stuff, he's like, okay, and then you can do this, and he's plugging the wires in there, and he's twisting this up, and then you can do this, and he unplugs this and plugs it in here, and he's like, and this goes in there, and that goes in here, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't understand any of this stuff. So I started feeling really worried that I was going to spend $3,000 on this Eurorack start out and have no idea what I'm going to do with it. So instead, he shows me this thing, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a good introduction to Eurorack. And one thing I can tell you is that in the entire time that I've had it, I've never used it in a track. I've probably sat down with it for a combined hour and just plugged the different things into different holes and twisted knobs to see what it can do. And it's fun for sonic exploration, but it's very, very limited for what it can do. And also because of my lack of imagination, it's really hard for me to figure out what I would do to put this into a track or into any music whatsoever. I could imagine like drones and bass lines and stuff like that, maybe, but my limited imagination does not combine well with this piece of hardware. It's not to say that I don't think it's an amazing piece of hardware, it's to say that it doesn't fit with my lack of imagination. So blame me, don't blame the device, but this is probably the one that I use the least out of everything in my studio is this right here. Moving along to here, another problem with my lack of imagination, this is a drum machine, and I suck at drum beats, and I thought that if I got this or another drum machine that it would help me make better sounding beats for my songs. And it hasn't helped me one bit because I can only really build basic stuff out of it and without making it sound like totally crowded and nasty sounding. It probably takes a lot more effort than I have put into it. There's a lot of knob tweaking you can do to really adjust the sound and stuff like that, and you can adjust levels and really jump and dive into your beats. And you can even make full tracks on here by importing samples and stuff, but I've never done that. I just got it as like hoping to put some really fat beats into my songs. And honestly, the beats that I can make out of the MPC Live, it's so much easier to make a beat on the MPC Live than it is to make one on here. So this is another piece of gear that I've hardly used at all. I don't even know if it's in a single track that I've ever made. It's just unused gear. Unfortunate, but that's the way it is. No big deal. Maybe one day I'll sit down with it and I'll just suddenly fall in love with it, but it hasn't happened yet. Moving along, right here is my Box Medusa. This is a cool device. This is something actually I didn't really like when I first got it. I'm not sure why, but I felt that a couple things. One, I would put it to P2, which is like paraphonic. So there's M, which is monophonic, P1, which is paraphonic, and P2, which is kind of pseudo polyphonic. But you've got very limited voice configurations. And what it does for that one there is it uses a different oscillator for each note. And you have 6 oscillators, 3 of them analog and 3 of them digital. But the thing is, all the oscillators can sound quite different, so each note can sound different. So if you press a chord, it can sound really odd. When I first got it, there was some issues that I had with like understanding how it worked. Like, for example, understanding the voice priority and stuff like that. I didn't really understand it, so I was having a lot of trouble with it, and I really didn't like it. Then I watched a video by Ben and Gear about why the Medusa is better than a lot of people think. And he introduced a lot of stuff about it, and he also made me scratch my head and go, oh, that's what it does for a lot of stuff. Went back to it, and I like it a lot more. It's a lot of fun to tweak and play around with the different sounds you can get of the analog and digital synthesizers. I like that it has 6 oscillators, not synthesizers, oscillators. 6 oscillators all together that you can play all at the same time. I really enjoy how you can just go through different wave shapes and even wave tables. Then there's the pad right here, or the grid, and you can set up patterns, you can play chords, you can do all sorts of different stuff with this, although I haven't really dug too deep into it. Once I learned how to use the sequencer, that was really what made me like this a lot more. And then I started wiring the MIDI out into the MPC Live, controlling my other gear, and then using this thing to run patterns. And then I had MIDI going from the MPC Live into here so that it could control the tempo and also start and stop when the song starts and stops. And I started having a lot more fun with it. So yeah, there's that. And then the last thing right here, this is another thing that I got, and I was kind of interested to see if it would spark some creative juices in me, the pocket operator. And yeah, I don't know. It's a toy for me. It's just a toy. I've seen people do some really cool stuff with like chains of pocket operators. But for me, once I figured out how to use it, I was kind of like, okay, cool. That's that. I couldn't see myself using it in any tracks. It's just, I don't know, limited like that. On to some like peripheral things. I've got my mixer right here. This kind of was an interesting buy. This thing cost about $100, a high Vobo. It's a Chinese mixer. And I got it because my wife refused to let me spend, like $500 to $1,000 on a better mixer. So I just ended up getting one of these. And it's been a nice stopgap. It's got a really clean signal. There's no buzz, no hum, nothing like that. It's very clean. The only issue I had with it is when I first got it, the right audio channel died like almost immediately after I bought it. Sent it back, got it back, and it's worked ever since for probably 2 years since then, or 1.5, 2 years. So yeah, it's been a decent buy. I've got my effects pedal here. I'd say I use this a lot, especially for the reverbs. I really like reverb in my like different sounds. I like hearing like a clean square wave and then running it through a reverb, and it just, I don't know, I really like the sound of all these different signals running through reverb. And this has a lot of really good reverbs in it. There's a whole bunch of extra programmability in here. Like if I connected to it through an iPad, I could reprogram the whole thing. But I don't really jump into that. I just use the presets mostly and a couple of the patches that I made in it. And aside from that, it's a really nice pedal. I enjoy using it. There's a lot to be done with it. It sounds wonderful and it's fun to use. Down here is my Soundcraft Notepad 12FX. I got this in Canada. It's the first mixer I ever bought, and I didn't realize that it wouldn't be enough for me because I kept getting more and more gear. It's not a bad mixer, although I do find it has a pretty bad hum. Out of all my mixers, this one, oh, not all my mixers, I only have 2 mixers. Out of my 2 mixers, this one definitely has the louder signal. And recently it's gotten quieter. The signal has gotten quieter, so there's no more hum, or like less hum, which is interesting because I don't even know what I did to change that. But for probably the first 2 years, there was this really loud all the time. Not so loud that it was like distracting to the music, but if there was a quiet part of the song, you could hear it. Thankfully, that's gone away, and I don't know why, but it's gone away, and that's nice. So anyway, that wraps up my, let me just flip the camera around. So yeah, that wraps up my studio tour and what I use and what I don't use, and why I like this and why I don't like that, and I hope that gives you some insight onto perhaps how not that you care, but how I make music with my gear. Anyway, I hope you guys leave a comment in the comment section down below. Please like the video, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys in the next video. This is Kekus out.